Okay, so I just kicked off the recording again. So what we're doing is we're going through an exercise together of talking about what the system design or the architecture could be of a customer support agent. So we can all align on that, make sure we have all the questions out of the way, make sure it makes sense for everybody, so that as you all are actually building this out throughout the course, we have this doc to reference back to, so it's very clear what we should be doing. Okay. So let's maybe just start off right away with a discussion on what we mean by a customer support agent, right? That can mean a lot of different things. It can have a bunch of different use cases. Let's just like talk about them now, right? So when I say a customer support agent, let's talk about these two things because everybody doesn't have to do the exact same project. I don't want to be coercive in that regard, right? You're free to make this interesting to you, right? You can use whatever APIs you want, whatever LLMs you want. Not going to be that strict, but let's align like a few things, right? So what what even is a customer support agent in your mind, right? Like does anyone have any, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. There's multiple answers, but does anyone have something they want to share?
Yeah, I mean, something that helps customers with questions or problems or issues related to some company's product or service.
Mhm. Helps customers with issues, answering questions related to some service or product. Okay, yep, sounds amazing. Does anyone have anything they want to add to that? No? Okay, sounds good. So when we're building this, does anyone have like any ideas on, just in case someone's mind is like blank, does anyone have like some ideas on like what sort of like company they would want to have for this? And two things, like any like specific type of company, like for example, does someone want to make like a hospital or for like a clothing store? And then on top of that, like what like functionality, yeah, maybe it's simple questions. Like what functionality should this have? Right? Like is this just text? Is it voice? Like curious if anyone has any thoughts on either of these two questions. Essentially like the features we would need it to have, right? So not necessarily the tech behind it yet, but the features that we need it to have, right? So what kind of company, what features? Any thoughts? Huh? Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just come off of mute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would say like something like Amazon where they have a whole bunch of products uh that people are buying. And then for functionality, I feel like the most useful case of like agents when it comes to customer service is t just text only. Um, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so text-based communication, and then answering questions about like a product catalog, example, Amazon. Okay. So what that's great. So what sort of I like this. Let's just double click on this real quick. So I like this like product catalog, right? So I was looking for like a something more niche. Like this is definitely for sure the high level answer, but this is a good like use case, right? Like a product catalog, right? So like Amazon or Shopify store, whatever. Um, right? Just something like that, right? So what sorts of questions would we need this to answer? Right? We have this whole product catalog answering questions. What kind of questions? Like, what kind of questions could a customer ask?
Like shipping information or date.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, like tracking shipping information. Okay, perfect.
Could also ask like product specific details, like what material is this made out of, or uh,
Mhm,
does it come with a warranty?
mhm. Perfect. Yeah, those are two amazing examples. That's probably the main things. But maybe if someone could think of like one or two more things, maybe. But yeah, that's probably the main things for sure.
Maybe like comparison. Like they want to know which product is better. So can you compare
Mm.
these two products?
Ooh, that's really good. Yeah. Okay. That's really good. Okay, let's leave that there. That's really good. Okay, so let's talk more about like functionality, right? So we said maybe it's bold. We said text-based communication or um any other kind of communication that we think maybe that's like a first step, but any other kind of communication that would be good? Oh, I see something in the chat. Shopper personality. Ah, okay, I love that. Yeah, we talked about like system prompts earlier. So yeah, giving the agent a functionality or a personality. I love that. I really like that. Okay, that's a good one. Any any other thoughts? So it's that audio based. Love that. Yep, we talked about the OpenAI APIs for that. Awesome. It's probably the main things. Um,
The guidelines for the model, like for how it should be speaking to the
I
customers.
love that. I love that. Look at that. Using all the things we talked about in class. Perfect. Perfect. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, text, audio, personality guidelines. Yeah, I think that's the main things we talked about. There's one more thing I'm thinking of that we talked about. Um, Curious if anyone has one more thing they could add here. Well, actually, I take that back. This is all the functionality like the chatbot should have. Maybe let me take a step back. Like I'm thinking about like observability, right? So like anything else that we should consider for our like application. These would be like an interview context, like non-functional requirements. So I'm not sure if y'all thought like systems design interviews, like historically that was only for like mid-level or like senior candidates, but here super recently the hiring bar has gotten so high, companies started to ask like new grads. System design interviews, I've even heard in some super rare niche cases that interns get asked that. But um so just like some foreshadowing, if you haven't heard of that yet. There's like functional requirements, there's non-functional requirements, like things, functional requirements are like actual features of the app, and then non-functional requirements are just other things like observability. Like, oh, we need to know if it's broken. Um, yeah, so said oh yeah, guardrails. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like you can actually use like AWS guardrails. Oops. Guardrails. Exactly. Okay, that's an amazing one, Daniel. Yeah, when to convert to real customer support. That is amazing. Ideally, if there was an issue, you should be able to convert to a real person, right? It's just like when you go on the phone and you're trying to, I don't know, talk to some automated bot, you can usually say like, oh, representative, or you can just say like, hey, I want to speak to a real person. Or sometimes the AI itself will be like, okay, I'm confused. I'm gonna have to route you to a real person. If you ever had to call companies nowadays, you may have experienced that. I certainly have myself. So yeah, that's a great functionality. We definitely want that. Cool. Okay. So when I'm talking about non-functional requirements, right? I'm talking about yeah, like observability, right? Like how do we know if it's broken, right? How do we set like these metrics and logging, right? We've talked about that super abstract in the slides, but we need to like actually learn how to do that in this course, like an actual code. Um, so yes, observability. Something we have not discussed yet is security. Okay, we won't get too much of that today, but we'll have like a future lesson on like security setup and stuff like that. But any other things just like high level that we just think if we're building an actual project, we want this to be impressive on a resume, or even if we don't put it on a resume, we just want to be able to like talk about it in an interview. Like anything else we think we should put in here that's not like AI related. We'll like talk about that in a bit. But just
Maybe
like
like,
any Mhm.
sorry, like tests
Perfect.
for, yeah.
hmm Now for tests, right? Does anybody know that about the different kinds of tests?
With AI models, no. I just know for like React.
Yeah, just like software in general.
Unitax.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Unit and
Jest.
integration test.
Exactly. Yep. That's the two main ones for sure. Can anyone tell me like the difference between the two?
So for unit testing is to see if one particular part of the thing you're building works, and then integration testing is to see if they work well together.
Yeah, yeah, love that. So yeah, so a unit test, just like you said, it's like a single unit of code. Um, so you're not using like real AP, usually you're not using like real API calls or not using like a real database. It's just like super fast tests. Like, hey, like I click this button, this like modal should pop up, or I don't know, it's like super simple things like that. Like, is this box checked? Um, if you have any other examples, please put them in the chat. Um, but super something like that versus just like you said, integration test is like, hey, these components interact with each other, right? So like, does this API call actually update the database? Uh, things like that. Um, cool. So the last kind of well, there's actually tons of different kinds of tests, like a regression test and smoke test and blah blah. But when usually when people talk about apps, that they talk about unit test, integration test. That's pretty much it. Some people also throw out this thing called like end-to-end testing, which is like trying to like make sure the whole flow works. But usually that's like manual, right? Like, okay, let's make sure a user logs in. Let's make sure they can add an item to a cart. Let's make sure they can check out. Is it like the whole thing end to end? But usually that's like a manual thing. So yeah, end-to-end tests, or sorry, unit tests, integration tests programmatically. That's good. Cool. Okay. So this is pretty good, right? So let's maybe talk about like how does AI come into play? Okay. And when I say AI, I don't mean machine learning, right? Because canonically, that's how these were set up. Like I had a internship at Clorox, for example. I was like a machine learning intern, and we didn't use any AI, but we still made chatbots like, in our website, right? But I'm talking about the context of like AI, like how. if you're building this project, how does AI come into play?
Communicating with like the customer, or
Hmm. Yep.
it also
Uh,
searches like database for the information on that product.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So yeah, so communication with the customer, and then you mean like a like document retrieval, like searching for information, right? So this is where we want to actually put some of the things we were talking about abstract like into practice. So you got like a knowledge base slash like vector store, right? We could try to implement RAG. We talked about that in a previous lecture. Yeah, that's certainly the main things for sure. Love that. Any any other things we want to keep in mind here? Just definitely the main things. But just curious if there's anything else that anyone's mind. Okay, so yeah, I think we covered the main things, right? Yeah, I think we covered the main things. Let me actually think myself. Um, I think it'd be so now this would be a certainly a stretch goal. Let me put this. This is like pretty complicated. But maybe we could talk about this. Um, has anyone heard of the concept of a eval pipeline, like in the context of the AI industry? Guys, got some no's. Nope. Okay, so an eval pipeline is essentially it's like, hey, exactly, yep, exactly, Daniel. Yeah, essentially, yeah. I'll use your exact words. So two things. So rating the prompts, like the prompt output quality. Uh, and then sometimes there's also like self-improvement there, but we won't worry about that, right? Then it's just like, hey, storing how the output quality is doing. Okay, like some analytics in place there. Um, now you could say like, hey, like cut tickets to the eng team if the quality is dipping badly. Okay. So this is another like observability piece we could have in here, right? So when we say observability up here, we're kind of talking about like, hey, is the site down or is some part of the site broken? But this is also like observability here, right? Like, hey, if these quality is just crashing for some reason, we would want to be alerted of that. Okay, cool. Okay. So that's like the main things here, right? So let's take a step back, right? So we have this doc, right? In terms of actually getting started on this, right? If you all had to like open up your IDE and like start banging away on this right now, let's maybe just like take a few moments to think, is there any like questions or concerns that would come up, you would think, right? Like we've talked about how to do, I think all of these things at a high level. We haven't actually like walked through examples of like for example, like how to set up a CloudWatch or something like that. Like right, once everyone has their API set up, we can do things like that. But yeah, anything in here is like, oh hey, like I don't even know how to start. I think a clear one is like the eval pipeline, but anything that anyone wants to explicitly call out. And not sure where to start, but I'll figure it out. Okay, well let's talk about that, right? So in terms of where to start, right? So in a previous day, I had us set up like a basic hopefully everyone has a like a repo set up where they have like where they could talk to like LLM back and forth, right? So in terms of like let me just put this oops, explicitly, right? Like where to start. And let me put this link in the chat again. I know I see some people joined recently. But okay, where to start? Okay, so I would suggest starting with like just like a single page. It's like a single page UI. Always recommend people use React. Um, so this is it doesn't have to be TypeScript, but I suggest you use TypeScript. Um, just for like the front end. You can just start with the front end, right? Just make it simple there. Um, I would say use Next.js, but you don't have to. Some people like Vite or whatever. But in terms of like actually hosting this, I don't know, I'm sure if you guys have heard of Vercel, like the company Vercel. Vercel made Next.js, and then you can host on Vercel. It's like a lot easier. Um, that's something you can do, or maybe there's like some other hosting site you're familiar with. No pressure to no pressure to use this actual this site to host, but just a suggestion. That's what I usually use. And I would say just like pick a LLM to use for the text-based communication. Okay. Yeah, and we talked about in the past like system prompts for personality, right? We talked about the OpenAI APIs you could use for audio, right? So that's where I would get started. We talked about how to set up like a vector store using OpenAI's API. I would be starting with those things, right? Like we talked like RAG, like already comes out of the box with the most popular LLM APIs. And I would say don't worry about the eval pipeline for now. Cool. Okay. So if there's no other questions here, I'll stop the recording.